So Signature Apartments is a building complex of 91 residential and 8 commercial units. Well, about 2 years ago, some of the residents were giving us some feedback on the ways we're handling waste around the building, and some were in relation to the recycling and the general waste. But one thing that was being put forward by a couple of residents was around compost, and the fact that they had a lot of compost being produced, whether it be vegetable scraps or fruit scraps or other sort of food waste, and that they didn't really like the idea that we're throwing it in the bin all the time. So one of the residents came up with the idea of us using a specific type of composting bin, aerobic compost bin, and we bought one of them as a trial. And the first one was a great success, a great learning at the same time. I wouldn't say a failure, but it was an interesting learning experience. So the first one we got in, it filled over about 3 or 4 months' time, but when we opened it up to actually use it the first time, this horrible sludge came out of it. And the reason it was a horrible sludge coming out of it, none of us knew you were meant to put lots of brown waste and paper in it, lots of dry waste. So it was a really great learning experience. We knew the next time round what to do. But that sludge that came out, we put into the garden, we let it sit for a month or two, and it produced the best herbs and best vegetables of all of the garden. So in the end, it was a great success. But one thing we learned earlier on is that people like convenience. And we find that most units don't want to go to multiple locations to drop off their waste. So they don't want to drop off their recycling and their garbage in one place and their compostable material in another. So we have a centralised bin and recycling room in the building, and it wasn't really possible to put compost in that because of smells and other various things and the handling of it. So we put our compost bin up here on level 5 near our community garden. But because level 5 is the highest up and the furthest away from most of the units, it wasn't getting a great throughput. There might have been 7 or 8 different households that were putting their compost in it, but it wasn't any more than that. So what we found was we started, first of all, we did 2 things. One, we went to some of the local coffee shops and asked them to start saving compost for us. People would actually keep a small bin in their office kitchen and would bring it home once or twice a week, and they'd be collecting the fruit scraps and the vegetable scraps, etc., from their office. Because it was around that time we discovered the great benefit of compost. It wasn't just a great way of saving stuff from going into landfill, it was also a great way to make extra dirt. Because dirt and fertiliser and so on is very expensive, and with our building having limited budgets to spend on the garden, and the residents already putting money into buying seeds and plants and so on for the garden, for the vegetables and the herb gardens, we wanted to be able to produce a lot more dirt to be able to fill up our gardens so they'll grow a lot better. And that was one thing we're getting out of the compost. So in an effort to also collect more compost, we put a bin down on level 2, which was a lot closer to a lot of the residents. And that worked really well, and actually it was way too successful to start with. We put it in an area that was very highly visible and had high foot traffic, and it filled up within the first month. The problem was, because it was highly visible and had high foot traffic, some of the residents were slightly disturbed by having a compost bin so close to their units. We tried it in an alternate location that was a lot better, but still it was a little bit too visible to the owners and to the tenants from their units. So we finally have moved it into one of the formal gardens. Now the problem is, where it is now, it's probably getting a third of the usage that it was in its most visible location, but a lot of that might also be we've just been over winter and people are less likely to travel that extra few metres in winter to put things away. We've also found educating the units that what they can do is put a very small garbage bin, flip-top bin in their fridge, and use that to slowly fill up during the week. So when they're doing cooking, they leave that on their countertop, they throw their vegetable scraps in it, and then put it back in their fridge. There's no smell, there's no inconvenience of it, and then once a week they'll probably fill it up and they can go put it in the compost bin at that stage. And we found it's been a good take-up of people doing that. One issue we did have with the compost though at the beginning was people not understanding what to put in it. So we very clearly signed that there was only certain sort of materials that can go in, the fruits, the vegetables, the green waste, not meat, not cooked food, etc. But a lot of the people didn't understand that still, or a lot of people that maybe come from a different language background didn't have an understanding of what it was. So a suggestion was put forward by somebody outside of the building to put up signs that say, "I'm a vegetarian compost bin." And we did that along with pictures of no meat, no dairy, no garbage, and we did it in multiple languages. And we found that's helped a lot with people understanding what they can put in the compost bin. There is a lot of management though with the compost bins, unfortunately. They're not a set and forget. We wish they were, but if somebody keeps an eye on it once a week, they do produce really great results. We have a lot of units that are actually even more involved, and they run worm farms on their balconies. And we know 4 or 5 units that do that. So some of our people that are most interested in composting in the building are actually not using the compost bins because they're already doing it for themselves. So we're trying to get the next tier down of people that are aware of the issue but are not maybe excited enough to go do their own composting to try and be involved.